The Lupe and Royce Show is a Say What Media production.
That was pretty good. Hello, Lupe and Royce Show Nation. This is your regular dude, Tom, and I'm here to inform you we're on a break this week. But we have a very special interview to share that was originally aired right before Lupe's Food and Liquor concert this past month. So for those of you who didn't catch it, or those who just want to watch it again, sit back, grab your popcorn, and enjoy the show. Hey, and please remember, at the end of each and every show, we air your voicemails. You can also leave a voicemail to get on the show at 707-276-6261. Leave us a rating on Apple, and definitely share the show on social using hashtag Lupe and Royce. The Lupe and Royce Show is on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and all those other places. We'll be back next week for a regular episode. Until then, peace and love.
Today's show is sponsored by Masterclass. With Masterclass, you can learn from the world's best minds, anytime, anywhere, and at your own pace. You can learn modern Japanese cooking from Nikki Nakayama, or learn scientific thinking and communication from Neil deGrasse Tyson, with over 100 classes from a range of world-class instructors. That thing you've always wanted to do is closer than you think.
Learning a lot?
Fellas, I'm in the midst of learning about the art of negotiation with Chris Voss. He's a former negotiator for the FBI and talks about bargaining, body language, and neuroscience, and the fact that great negotiation is about great collaboration. The give and the take, and the belief of who's doing what.
I highly recommend that you check it out. Get unlimited access to every masterclass, and as a listener of the Lupe and Royce Show, you get 15% off an annual membership. Go to masterclass.com/Lupe and Royce. That's masterclass.com/Lupe and Royce for 15% off Masterclass.
You're listening to the Lupe and Royce Show with Lupe Fiasco, Royce the 5'9", and Tom Frank.
Previously on the Lupe and Royce Show.
Have you ever seen Seinfeld?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever seen the one where Kramer decided to become super efficient? And so he tried to compile as many activities into one as possible throughout his day. And there was that scene where he was washing all the food in the shower. So he...
Oh, that is right.
I wish I could laugh at that. I was too busy watching Friends.
Oh, my God. Anyway. The Lupe and Royce Show is a Say What Media production.
That was pretty good.
Yo, what up? This is Lupe Fiasco, and Food and Liquor is 15 years old, cuz.
Yo, what up? This is Royce the 5'9", and I'm telling you right now, son, we ain't talking about nothing but classic shit today. Nothing. That's it. Tom, it's on you.
This is Tom Frank. I'm just a regular guy, and we're bringing you a very, very special episode of the Lupe and Royce Show. Lupe, we're diving all in.
Yeah, man, I seen you did
One word.
What kind of
One word to describe Food and Liquor. What would it be?
Man.
Classic.
You asked me, Royce. First.
Well, I don't get an answer to. Oh, okay, my bad. Go ahead.
First.
We're off to a good start.
First. It's not I don't know if it's officially 15 years old, so I want to make sure. It's Ramadan, so I want to make sure I'm not spreading lies, and I won't be cussing either, because I'm trying to maintain.
It's 15 years
purity.
old.
I think it's around there. Came out in 2006.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. But first, I hesitate to say classic, even though I know it is. It sits in that space as a classic. It has all of.
Is it a classic?
Yes, it's a classic.
There you go.
I know. Here's why I ask. 10 years ago, or no, 5 years ago, when it was on its 10-year anniversary, someone asked you if it was a classic album, and at that point you said no.
Yeah, still.
Who?
That's what I'm saying.
But it's not up to, that's not up to Lupe to determine. The fans get to determine what's classic and what's not. And as far as general consensus, it's considered a classic for sure.
There you go.
I would consider it a classic. Do you consider it a classic?
Man, all I see is the mistakes. You know, all I see is what I could have done better.
But it's about that. It's not about that. It's about the way that
it's perceived.
Reacts, the way that it reacts to culture, and the way that it resonates, and the way that it ages within the culture.
I was gonna.
It's out of your hands now, bro.
I was gonna say I do have recently. I have gained an appreciation for it in that way. Like for myself personally. Like I find myself, because I had to listen to it again to remember it for the show, right? Like going through it, remember all the words. And I started to gain, I started to gain a deeper appreciation for the album, like personally. Like I started to enjoy it. Like, oh man, that really rocks. Like, oh that's pretty cool. Like, oh man, didn't even know that was coming. And part of it is because
why you think that is, Lou?
part of it is because we had Food and Liquor in '06 and then the Cool in '07, right? But we was working on Food and Liquor prior to that. And you know how when you're working on an album, you'd be working, the day that it come out ain't the day you just start working on it, right? So you might have been working through stuff for that time or whatever, right? And when we used to perform records from Food and Liquor, it's like when the Cool came, Food and Liquor kind of got pushed. The songs that we would perform kind of got pushed, like, oh, we're not going to do that song no more. Or people want to hear this song, so we're going to replace that song with this song because we only got 40 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour to perform, right? And so if we were going to cut anything, we were going to start cutting records from like Food and Liquor, The same thing with Lasers. Lasers come out, so okay, we're going to have just a mix of the Cool and Lasers. Maybe we just do the hits is what we would call it. So we would just pick the hits from Food and Liquor and just do those to fill out the show, which is a kind of a blessing and a curse. But the thing would be is that we would only do maybe like 2 verses. You know what I'm saying? Of this one song, or 1 verse of this one song. So over the years, that's what I just got used to, just hearing 1 verse of a particular song or 2 verses, to the point where I didn't even remember like the other verses or whole songs that we had never performed or something like that, right? So when I went back, and we knew we were going to start doing like Food and Liquor only tours or shows, maybe like last year, 2 years ago, right before COVID is when we were supposed to do like a Food and Liquor tour. So that was a few of the first times where I started to actually go back through the whole record and listen to the whole, like relearn these verses, hear these songs that I hadn't even done. Like just recently, it was like, man, I know Jay-Z's verse for Pressure. You know what I'm saying? Like I could start doing Jay-Z's verse for Pressure. That would have been like, I don't even know my verse from Pressure, a few years ago type situation. So being reintroduced to the music of my own music for the sake of having to perform it again, and then finding ways like, the way I'm going to do this now that I'm older, when not 15 years ago, I would have approached it this way. I would have did it that way. So now it's like all of the stuff that I learned through the years with different albums, different performances. I can project that stuff back onto Food and Liquor. So it's almost kind of like an update. You know what I'm saying? Little tweaks, little things here. A little bit more comfortability with the music. And maybe wrap up on this, is like, because I know that the album is the consideration that Royce just gave it, I ain't really got nothing to prove. Like I'm not trying to sell this album anymore. Like when it first came out, you're trying to sell it. You know what I'm saying? You're trying to win people over. The work is already done, so you approach it in a different way where you can really enjoy it for what it is, as opposed to having the pressure, like the financial pressure or the sales pressure or the cultural pressure, like the rappers really like this. Is this really good hip hop or stuff like that? All that's done. So now you could just like enjoy the performance, enjoy the music, enjoy the features and the collabs and stuff like that. So that's why I say I got a better appreciation for it now.
What was one of the songs that when you re-listen to or you relearned it, like that you're like, whoa, I really now appreciate, like this is a song I haven't done in a long time that when I look back on it, it kind of shines.
Real, which is like the first track on the album, one of the first tracks, Real. And I remember we were rehearsing with the band with it one time. So we got this show, but we were doing Food and Liquor shows like right before COVID, and was doing it with a full band, and rehearsing with the band, and we would just do Real, and it was just like, yo, this rocks. Like this is a vibe. You know what I'm saying? Like this is a vibe. And you can kind of think like, oh, it's a vibe now because it's live, right? Like you got all the musicians and all these pieces and parts. And then even when that goes away and I'm just listening to it just as the song on the CD where it's just produced, it's still like, oh, this is a vibe. Like, oh, this is nasty. This is, ooh. So probably Real that I find myself going back to and just listening. And like, yo, this rocks, you know. But then is many discoveries throughout the album, right? Because you're like, man, I forgot what this third verse was even about. And then you hear that third verse and you're like, ooh, I see why people vibe with this. Like, I see why people had this respect for this song or respect for that stuff that I forgot about. Like,
So
topics.
is it safe to say that after a certain amount of time, when you're not in it and you're not thinking about anything but the music, you're able to go back to it retroactively and hear it as a fan and appreciate it as a fan, as opposed to just being an artist and you can just appreciate it differently? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, you become and it's almost like because it's done the work, like it's proved itself and won its battles. It doesn't come across as like vanity. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it could come across like that's a
Right.
vain way to think, right? Um, but there's nothing really else to prove. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that Food and Liquor is gonna go, like super triple platinum anytime soon. So at a sales way, it's kind of like at its age. Hopefully be rediscovered and that occurs or something happens. But even without that saying, like it can come across like, oh, that's a vain thing to say. You're a fan of your own music, but it's like, nah. I mean, it's already improved itself. Like it improved itself to be a body of work that people love and rock with. So now I can step back, like you said, and be in the audience, right, and look at it from that point of view, and literally because I forgot it. So it's like I'm being reintroduced to it in a certain way, and so it's like you get that first kiss experience all over again. And us as writers, we entertained by the stuff we write as we write it. That epiphany or that the way, like, oh, how can I play this word? How can this metaphor? And sometimes it just comes out of nowhere, and I find myself laughing. Like when I start writing, like, oh, that was funny, that was dope. Like, oh, such gonna love
As
it,
an
such
artist,
gonna love
though.
it. As an artist, right?
As an artist, yeah.
And then, so imagine you forget all that whole
Mm-hmm.
piece, and then you come back to the music, and you ain't got ain't no expectations, literally. And then you hear it, and you're like, oh, that was dope. Like, oh, that was dope. But then you're like, oh, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I
Especially
mean,
those lines you forgot. You forgot you even said and shit. 'Cause there's been so many since then, and then you go back and it's like, wow, okay. I like hearing it from this perspective, the no pressure perspective, because I know we spoke candidly about kick push, and your intention wasn't for it to do what it did. So would you say, looking back in retrospect, that some of the questions that you may have had, that the success of it may have posed, because it's considered a classic. The song itself is considered a classic. Would you say that the song itself answered some of the questions that it posed, being able to listen to it as a fan, from a fan perspective?
I mean, the difference with Kick Push and the rest of the album is Kick Push has been alive this whole time. So we're not doing the show and we're not doing Kick Push. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was one of the hits. Even back then, we recognized it was a cultural hit. We recognized that it had did something in the space that was outside of hip hop, that was outside of skateboard. It just transcended so many spaces. So Kick Push been with us this whole time, and you kind of get, it's almost like taken for granted. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're gonna do Kick Push in the middle of the show, right? Or you're gonna do Kick Push first, and like, man, he did Kick Push first, but they know I got 10 other records that's gonna have that same type of reaction, right? Or we're gonna do Kick Push last, as the encore, because now we could do encores. You feel me? Like, we can, oh, he forgot to do Kick Push. Like, no, I didn't. Here we go, right? But in terms of like the initial, like, and like you said, we talked, like, the initial piece of Kick Push, it was never meant to be my song. You know what I'm saying? It was never at any moment in its creation that it was supposed to be mine, right? Like, it was like, I heard the beat. And it was like, man, this beat would be dope for them. You know what I'm saying? And I had the chorus. I was like, yo, this chorus would be dope to go on that beat. That's for them, right? And then the verses was almost like throwaways, where it was like, well, you got a beat, you got a chorus. Hey, I got some verses, right? And then you do the verses, but the verses, again, are for them, right? And it's like, if I got one verse, I might as well finish the story, right? And it's only till it's completed, and then somebody else hears it, and it's like, no, that's for you, right? Like,
and now it's definitely you.
now it's mine, right? It's so different
Yes.
up until that point. I don't say it's so different, but it has a songs that I consider to be album songs. Like this is gonna represent me, that people are gonna pay for. We're gonna have exchange of value. That's so different from everything that I was making up until that point, right? Because what I wanted to be known for was like, man, I want to be the dude who came from the streets, but also the politics and the martial arts and all the other stuff just all bundled into this thing. I want to come across as that, the nerd kid and da. And I looked at Kick Push never to be a part of that program at all. You know what I'm saying? Well, I don't want to go 100%. Like, I never thought it was going to be anything like that, but it wasn't a part of the program. It wasn't a part of the process, right? And then it became the process, to the point where now, Kick Push is, if I'm known for anything, you got to mention Kick Push, right? You got to. So
now that when you dedicated this album originally to your grandmother, correct? I mean, I re-listened to this again, and your grandmother at the very beginning. Was she kind of the inspiration behind it, or what was the true inspiration? What was the thought process behind Food and Liquor?
I wanted the title itself, right? If you go to Chicago, all the stores are called Food and Liquors. So like in Detroit, how they got Coney's, right? It's like this restaurant's a Coney, that restaurant's a Coney, this is a Coney. All our corner stores are Food and Liquors, right? And Mike's Food and Liquor, One Stop Food and Liquor, 111 Food and Liquor, whatever Food and Liquor. And the liquor store was always, I feel like it's funny because I'm remembering like promo that I used to do back then. People were like, so what is this album about? I'm like, oh, so Food and Liquor, right? But it was like the name of the stores that we used to go to as kids. And each store had a different like energy, a different set of consequences and circumstances to get there. And then what was happening up there. So it could be the store where people get shot. It could be the store where the dude is cool. The store owner is cool, right? It could be another store that's that gang neighborhood, and you can't, or that store got this type of candy, and this store don't, and that store got the vegetables, but this store don't, right? So it was always like the center of the community because that's where everybody went to get their supplies. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have like a grocery store like that. We kind of had something like a little grocery store, but nothing like a Costco or a Jewel or something like that. Like it was like if you wanted a treat or you wanted to get something just quick for the crib or some bread or something like that, you go to the food and liquor store. So, but it was the food and liquor store. You know what I'm saying? So it had, me not growing up Muslim, not drinking, seeing like actually developing a hatred for alcohol because of what it was doing in my community and what I seen. It was that like, man, like that's the bad, and then like the food is the good, but it's all in one place, and everything that I see has good and bad. You can see the smiles and the jokes of the prostitutes, right? But then you'll hear about, the prostitute that got strangled at the school and her body's dumped behind the school, right? And then you got, like the gangbangers, like you might play basketball with the homie, right? Until you step on his shoes. Now it's finna be a fight. You know what I'm saying? Or somebody might die spinning off the end of that. So I've seen people come up and live both lives, the good life and the bad life, the angels and the demons, even myself. So I wanted something that represented that piece, the duality of reality, but then also something that was just, when you came, it was quintessentially Chicago, right? The food and liquor store, right? So that's why you get that piece. And if a lot of people don't know, if you ain't got the physical, so if you got the physical album and you look in the booklet, like there's a whole scene that we had played out. And actually the two things, if you look at the CD is just a bunch of signs of the food and liquor stores, right? That from around the city and stuff like that.
Poppin'.
So it looked like a circus, but it's like all the food and liquor signs. But if you look at the booklet, outside of me flying in space and doing all that, the book takes place in my hood. And the scene is like we replaced guns with books, right? And played out this scenario. of like these dudes going to buy. They had a book drive by. They went and bought the books like they was guns, checking them out. They went to get ready, so they went and got high off milk and cookies. And then they went out and did this drive-by with the books. And the people was dead with like books on their face, right, laying on the ground. That's all in my old neighborhood. And then we went to a school, and the school was flipped, where now that all of the books were now guns. So everybody in the school had a gun. Like everybody's learning about guns. Kids had guns and stuff like that. And it was that, again, that duality, but then also how those dualities are like interweave and create these weird chimeras and monsters, weird situations that we kind of got to navigate through, where we got to learn about violence to stay peaceful. We got to learn where not to go, or we got to learn to be violent. We got to stay dangerous, as they say. We got to learn how to be dangerous, right? Because that's what's going to keep us safe. So it's those weird things that happen and play, these weird algorithms that we got to go through as kids and as adults living in the hood. So that's what food and liquor kind of comes from, serving double duty. So you can sit and think about it in that duality way, but then you can also, it represents the city of Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever have any doubt about this? I mean, this was your first album. Did you have any doubt when this was kind of a different type of music. It wasn't your typical rap album. So
it was a different kind of message.
Yeah.
Different kind of message being conveyed. Just even when you talked about all of the different things the embodiment of so many different things, most artists, just from an artist perspective, would try to break themselves up into all of these different people. But you basically just stayed yourself, similar to Tupac, and you just conveyed Lou. You know what I mean? Like all of these different, you showed the multi-layers of a young black man. And it's incredible because my first album, everything that you just ran down, I didn't even get all that by looking in the booklet. But my first album, it was just a blue picture of me with a bedazzled bandana on.
It surely was.
It was just a bunch of songs about bullshit. You know what I'm saying? And the way that I got to this point, this point of peace that I'm at, is I had to go to war for it. I had to fight for it. I had to fight for this peace. You know what I mean? So for you to be that age and to be able to express that duality so articulately and do it with cultural classics and hit records.
It's amazing. Come out of the gate right with that.
You got to give yourself credit, bruh.
I mean,
that's amazing.
But here's the behind the scenes, right? The nitty gritty. When you look at food and liquor, right? That was 06. We were doing it in 05, maybe pieces of 04. I was in my 20s. I was in my mid 20s, and it was Jay-Z was the executive producer, right?
Mm-hmm.
We were doing. I mean, it was on a major label. It was on Atlantic Records, right? We were doing things behind the scenes to kind of manufacture it's the way it was rolled out, the way it was presented, and everything that was attached to it, right? So it was real thought out, right? It wasn't just something based off passion. It wasn't something just based off it was a thought process that went through it, not just musically, but everything that was attached to it, right? And so I mentioned Atlantic Records. That was my third record deal, right? So before that, I was on Arista with a full-blown record deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before that, we was on Epic. I was in a group, kind of slaughterhouse type situation. Three, four, I think it was three dudes. Butcher, D-Lo, Navi. Shout out to Butcher, D-Lo, Navi. They had a group called Wolfpack. But it was a full-blown record deal with Epic Records, So before I even got to my first record, I'd already been through the system, right? I already been through the marketing machines, the promotional machines, the performing to a certain degree. I kind of knew what the lay of the land was, right? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't straight out of high school, straight into the league, right? It was the league, just never coming on the court, but I was warming up with the team and traveling with the team, and I might play a few minutes at the end of the game, fourth quarter, to sub somebody out, but it wasn't as Um, I mean, because you can paint that, right? Like it was like dude from the hood who came and did this thing. I was out of the hood by that point. You know, I was in a different kind of hood, but I was out of the hood by the time that came out. And there was something to, you know, my mixtapes were already successful, right? So what people were waiting on was Food and Liquor, right? You had already had, you know, Revenge of the Nerds, Fahrenheit 115. You already had this, oh, this dude can rap, right? You had already had, I was supposed to be on Rockefeller, right? Jay-Z just don't pop on in the day. I've been knowing him for years, right? On all of the pieces and parts. So it's less of a real organic type of thing, right? And more, and the album leaked 3 months before it's supposed to come out, right? So you had the album leak come out before. So I always look at Food and Liquor as like premature, but you give birth to like a teenager. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a premature birth of a teenager, right? And all that means and all that entails. You feel me? Because it had everything going for it. You know, it had everything that it was supposed to do. And even when it came out, it still hit. You know what I'm saying? It still had like boom, like how was he able to hit these pockets so quick? Because I already been at that radio station. You know, I know dude already. Like I already been here with that. I already know how this gonna work. I'm hitting the ground running. As opposed to this is my first deal. This is my first. I'm gonna show you me. Like this is nah. It's like you already knew who I was to a degree, right? You already knew what was coming. So I honestly don't look at Food and Liquor as being that like organic kind of thing. I actually look at the cool like that, like my second album. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like create from the space that you in where you're stable. Right? It's you got a new plateau, a new platform. Things are stable. And you starting from scratch. Right? And then what can you create when you start from scratch and you stable? And you get the cool coming out of that, which I think is the superior record, you know, just personally. But yeah, but I mean, I've always been the nerdy kid with the revolutionary father, with the DIY mom who can make anything and make suits and cook and do the whole piece and super intellectual and surrounded by jazz. And my brother head of the GDs for a little time with his little clique. And then, you know, my sister's a ballerina and a dancer and, you know, and all my homies are in gangs. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, I'm looking at the streets, but I'm also reading encyclopedias and I want to be a scientist, you know, and, you know, I don't even really like rap like that because it's too violent. But then I'm also the dude who was skateboarding when he was 5. And then I'm also the dude who had the jump shot, had a nice little rainbow. But I was also the dude who could rap really, really good. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's a quilt. It's a quilt of an album all over the place.
I was going to say, that description is exactly Food and Liquor. Because you have timeless pieces in there, too. I mean, American Terrorist. I mean, that you could have made that in the past year, and it would still apply. I mean, there's so many of those songs looking back at it after a long time that just are ageless.
And that's scary. That's scary. But it's scary. I don't want to use the word prophetic because I just watch patterns. So it ain't got nothing to do with prophecy. Patterns repeat themselves, and I could see. I've lived long enough through cycles where I could see a new cycle coming off the same roots of the previous cycle that ended. So you're gonna get some of the same results. Part of that going back and listening to the record was that ain't pretty much changed. You know what I'm saying? Like the album is still relevant to the social conditions that were being talked about at the time, right? 15 years later, you know.
You go back and you listen to Marvin Gaye, Nina Simone, some of the most important artists that we've ever had, and it's the same thing. It's the same thing. The things that they're talking about and the things that they're speaking out against and the things that they're advocating for are the same things that we are asking for today. You know what I mean? Like, and the same violence, same fucking, you know, tyranny and everything else that goes along with it. It's all happening today. You know what I mean? That's why I think it's just important for some artists, not all have to do it, but I think it's important for the ones that have a knack for that, like the ones that can speak to issues and speak about things and be coming from a place that's genuine, that's from the heart. I think it'll always last. It's gonna always last. It's gonna always be important. You know what I mean? So those kind of albums, I don't think how much they sold should even be in the conversation, because it doesn't even matter. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna always be able to look back and talk about this kind of album. That's what classic is. You know what I'm saying? Like, Illmatic didn't sell as many as the rest of Nas albums. Not to pivot into an album that's not speaking to a whole bunch of social issues, but just pivot into another classic album in somebody's discography where there's other classics that exist. Illmatic is something about that first one, the first classic, that just does something to the culture. And if you were around at that time and you lived through it, then you get a better understanding of the impact. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. And I think the first album, and you know, we as young rappers, we had the meta narrative that we bought into, right? Like, same way with like ball players. You know what I'm saying? You mess around with your pops. You might do basketball camp. You know what I'm saying? You get good, but then when you go to, you play 8th grade, you do that. But then when you hit high school, you JV varsity, right? Then you got to go, McDonald's All-American, right? Then you got to go to college, you got to play NAAC ball, right? NCAA ball, right? Then it's the league, right? And then in the league, you got to do this, you got to All-Star, you got rookie, you got, all that, right? So we had a similar path in rap, right? Where it was like, you got to do things by certain dates. You got to have a certain kind of trajectory and other stuff. It's probably not as formalized as the NBA reference that I gave, but it was that your first album and the sophomore album. What dictated who you were going to be in the game was your sophomore album. Like that sophomore jinx. The sophomore jinx was real. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So you could have a first record, a first look, and dominate, right? Your first look. Blah, 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 blah. That's game one. Game two is where it matters, right? That's where it matters.
Yeah.
And that was what...
That applies across the board.
That was what was on my mind, right? Was like, okay, we get the first one out, but that second one is what's going to tell the tape, right? What's going to decide. Mm-hmm. So even what you were saying, just kind of speaking to what you were saying, Royce, like that first record piece, it's like, okay, yeah, you can get away with that, okay, as long as it's hitting and you know how to. It's more about what you take off than what you leave on for your first record.
You're establishing a sound. You're establishing something that the fans can grab a hold to and say, okay, this is what I fell in love with, and this is what I identify this artist as, and this is what I expect. So the second album is you basically trying to find a way to give them that and more. And more part is what fucks a lot of artists up. Putting too much emphasis on the and more.
Too much pressure.
Put too much emphasis on the and more. You know what I mean? Because you start shooting for things that you don't necessarily have to, and you lose the organic feel. So I mean, yeah, that sophomore drink shit is real. Not even just with albums, but with songs. Like hit songs or classic songs that connect in a certain way. It's hard to recreate that shit, especially if you're going in the studio with that on your mind. You weren't thinking like that the first album. So the first album, the success of an album just gives you more shit to think about that can distract you in the studio when you're going in that second time. You're thinking about all of these these markers and shit that you hit and these bars that you set that you feel like in your mind you can't perform under these bars. So now that's pressure within itself.
You're listening to the Lupe and Royce Show with Lupe Fiasco, Royce the 5'9", and Tom Frank. All right, fellas, one of today's sponsors is BetterHelp. We got a lot of pressing mental health issues in the world today. What do you think the most pressing one is?
I think it's the stigma associated with mental health in underserved communities, Tom.
And I think it's about being comfortable in your own skin, being who you want you to be.
Sounds like a time to recommend our sponsor, BetterHelp, which provides professional counseling in a safe and private online environment. Lou, tell our listeners how they can benefit from BetterHelp.
You can start communicating with a counselor in less than 24 hours. Schedule weekly video or phone sessions, send messages anytime, and even change counselors for free if needed.
BetterHelp's licensed professionals specialize in topics like depression, stress, anxiety, trauma, and anger.
BetterHelp is convenient, professional, affordable, and anything you share with your counselor is confidential. Get 10% off your first month by visiting our sponsor at betterhelp.com/Lupe and Royce. That's BetterHelp, HELP/Lupe and Royce. You're listening to the Lupe and Royce Show with Lupe Fiasco, Royce the 5'9", and Tom Frank. So some quick fire questions for you. You had a lot of people you collaborated on this thing. Who was, I gotta ask, who's number one? Who's the favorite one?
Man.
Sasha Green, Jay-Z,
Sarah Green,
Matthew
Jay-Z,
Stantos.
Matthew Stantos. I mean, so you got Gemini, Sarah Green, Matthew Santos. That's all soundtrack pro. I think Buchanan's is on there. Buchanan's on there. Christian Drop. I gotta look. I might be confusing things, but Jonah Montranga. But that's Linkin Park. So that's Jonah Montranga's not Linkin Park, but Mike Shinoda is. So Mike Shinoda, who did the beat for instrumental. Like I wanted to do, like how Royce talked about with Prime, right? Like your heroes. Like now I'm finna just do stuff with my heroes, right? And so for me, the album was like, man, I want to work with my heroes. You know what I'm saying? Like I want my first move to be the people that, to me, are like Jill Scott is, she's Sarah Vaughan and Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday. She's that to me. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I can't work with Billie Holiday, but I can work with Jill Scott. She's on that same level to me, right? So I gotta work with Jill. Like I don't care what it takes, what I have to do, I gotta do it with the expectation that she's not finna do it, right? Jay-Z, same way, but Jay is different. But it's like working with Jay, being around Jay, and then it's like, I'm finna get this verse from Jay. I'm gonna get that verse. That changed. That's like goosebumps. But being the same thing with Linkin Park. You know, being in the studio with Mike Shinoda was just like, I look up to this dude not only as a rapper in and of itself, but just Linkin Park. Like that meant so much to me. I remember putting stacked bundles up on Linkin Park. He was talking about how he used to just ride around Queens when he went back to New York. It was just bumping Linkin Park. People was looking at him like he's crazy, right? But it was just, at that time, those were my heroes. Like, I got to work with Linkin Park. I got to work with the Neptunes. Like, I got to work with Pharrell. I got to work with Chad. I got to work with Neptunes. Like, that's heroes. Like, these are my heroes. If I never get this chance again, I want my first thing to have all of the people that I really rock with musically and culturally. So you got the team conversation, the team, everybody on the squad is coming along for the ride, for the most part. And then it's like, okay, who's the heroes? You know, who do you want to make those first moves with? I remember I tried to get 3 6 Mafia on the album. I went down and worked with them. So that's what I was saying. It was like, I got to get a beat from 3 6 Mafia. It happened, but it didn't happen. So heroes, right? But the favorite, I mean, nothing beats being in Philly with Jill Scott.
Jill Scott it is.
Just this powerhouse on a song that is based on a story that my dad told me when I was 5 years old. If you put all the buildings of Chicago together, they're going to make a robot. And then being able to take that story and had Jill just put her Jill Scottness all over the top of it. And then it being she in the booth and she like, tell me what you want me to do. Like, what? Like, you know, take the reins. Tell me what you want me to do. I was like, you Jill Scott. You could just go in there and say, like, I'm Jill Scott and walk out the room. She's like, nah, tell me what you want me to do. And she did that whole, I was like, I want this whole, like, operatic type thing. And then she was just like, okay. And started banging out opera runs. I was like, oh! And I had the best Philly cheesesteak of all time from a restaurant that I don't think even existed when they went and got it. Because I've never been able to find it again in Philly. So it was just a perfect moment, man, to be in that space, and giving that control over greatness. You know what I'm saying? To see greatness have a humility to give you the control over it, to do something with it. It's like, yo, nothing beats that.
Mm-hmm. All right, favorite song to perform from that album?
I mean, nothing drops like Kick Push, man. Nothing.
Kick Push.
Nothing drops like Kick Push.
That's one of my favorite hip hop songs of all time.
Ever. ever.
For sure.
How about the one with the most meaning behind it that maybe we wouldn't know? Personal meaning.
I mean, Hurt Me Soul is, I never made personal records. Even to this day, I kind of don't. I still kind of shy away from it. I tell other people's stories, or I mask my story in the midst of some lyrical wall or something. But like Hurt Me Soul is probably the most personal record you ever get from me, outside of maybe records that are about my dad on Fighters on the next album. And Lasers. Lasers has a bunch of personal records on there, but you probably wouldn't be able to tell. But they're really, really personal. I was in a real bad space with Lasers. But He Say, She Say, right? But He Say, She Say is not about me, right? I had a dad, I had a mom, I had a family. But He Say, She Say was written for my homies who didn't have that, And so for me, and I constantly remember the homie that I was writing it for, or the homies who was in that space where the father figure wasn't around, you know what I'm saying? And just seeing that and what that meant. And I don't want to go too far and say it's damage, but what could have been, for those folks who did, and the way some of my homies turned out, like if it was a father there in a real serious way, maybe this would have went a different way. So yeah, probably He Say, She Say for a lot of people, because a lot of people went through that, and come back to me and say, man, He Say, She Say puts me in it breaks them,
I'll end it with this. Who is Lupe Fiasco because of Food and Liquor?
What?
He already said it. Wealthy and famous.
No, man. Nah, you know what it is?
You said it.
No. I get to I'm gonna keep it a buck, man. I get to be in the presence of my peers like Royce, right? Royce D59, right? The dude who
D59.
D59.
The guy, who is a grandmaster lyricist, who is revered, and has access to the greats. He got a group with DJ Premier. Like, come on, bro. Like, it's ridiculous to even say that. Like, yeah, I'm in a group with DJ Premier. Like, bro, when I was 14, what I would do to somebody for a DJ Premier beat, bro? I wanted my name scratched. Like, what I would do to somebody? But to know he got that on speed dial, and for the things that he just said about this record, to have his words, be a part of what this album is, to have his tattoo on it, so to speak, as it goes off into life, right? To know that it gets the energy and the kind words of my brothers like this is like super powerful. You know what I'm saying? Like, for me, that's like mission accomplished. You feel me?
Well, you did that. It resonated with us all. So thank you for those moments, sir. And we appreciate you. Give Lupe a round of applause, Tom. God dang it. Man, look at him. He got me not cursing.
Yeah, don't curse.
That ain't my thing.
Ramadan, man. Don't curse.
All right, cool. Ramadan coming. I could dig it. I'm gonna not curse too. I'm gonna not be cursing.
No, Ramadan is now. You not don't curse. It's now.
I ain't cursed.
Yo, what up? This is Lupe Fiasco, Food and Liquor, 15th anniversary. You know what I'm saying? Appreciate y'all. From me to you, and from you to yours. I hope it's added value to your situation. And I appreciate y'all for tuning in with us, for sure.
This is Royce the 5'9", and hopefully in one more year, when Food and Liquor is 16, it'll be driving. Go ahead, Tom.
This is Tom Frank. Thanks for listening. A classic album, a classic night. Sit back, enjoy the show.
Food and Liquor gonna pull up like...
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
What's going on, y'all? It's Sean from California. Good morning, Kings. And good morning to the coolest colonizer at the cookout, my man Tom. What's going on? I just want to say I really, really, really appreciate you guys for doing this episode. I felt like it was like it blew my mind when I heard y'all first commercial, I guess, or ad for BetterHelp from the beginning. I was like, wow, this is what they I'm like, okay. And I can honestly say that I've been using BetterHelp now for they just charged me last month. That's my fourth month now. And I mean, I love it. It's amazing. On my third therapist, they get it in. But, you got to find the right one for you, and I feel like I have. And, I feel like I got a better quality of life now, and it's only going up from here. Also, real quick, just got to say, y'all said it wasn't going to be no battle with the writing. Lupe just opened that door, man. He took mad shots at you, Royce. I mean, at least maybe that's just how I saw it. So if Royce got the pin this week, I am so excited to see how you choose back, because that was kind of foul. That was out of pocket. Why, Royce? Come on, man. You could have made somebody up. But anyway, I love y'all. What y'all doing? Keep doing it. Tom, keep being you. Keep holding it down. Y'all have a good one, fellas.
Lupe and Royce. I watched this not by advertising, but by choice. So, shout out to you guys, you fine gentlemen. You guys prove it every week that you can bring the heat, and even added more of these little sketches. And I think you guys are on to something. Shout out Tom, too. Central Pennsylvania, if you know, you know. Here we go.
Hey, yo, what's up? This is JT Ryder out of Atlanta, Georgia, a.k.a. Player2, at JT Player2 on Instagram. And a long-time fan of Royce. And Lupe, you aight. Now I'm just playing. But I was listening to one of the last 2 episodes, and y'all said you want to hear some raps. And I got some raps. But first I got a question. I just wanted to know, in terms of music, who did you two grow up listening to? Because I grew up listening to Tech and Eminem and imitating what they said. He's in a seat, a minute spinning, couldn't get it. Stop my head the same as I'm adrenaline. Instead of riddling, I'm picking 10 of them, and ever since I've been ahead of my years by light years. I've been quite near what you might hear when I'm right here with the mic here, with the mic here. I can bite here, I can bite your spine. Giving them a look. Who did y'all grow up listening to? Love the podcast, love the banter, and Tom on edge, you on the edge of greatness on a podcast with these 2 fine gentlemen. All right, love.
That's our show for the week. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe or follow. Leave us a review and tell your friends to listen. The Lupe and Royce Show is a production of Say What Media. It's recorded and mixed by Claude Jennings. Our head writer is Lauren Sloat. I'm Tom Frank. And our theme music is by, who else? Lupe Fiasco and Royce the 5'9".